The stars blinked slowly in the quiet darkness of space. Unaware that somewhere someone was crying out for help, the Alari were a peaceful race doll, silver-skinned beings with soft eyes and minds tuned to empathy. Their world, Leora, was green, soft, filled with glowing forests and floating lakes. They had never known war. Their tools were for healing, not destruction. For centuries, they believed kindness was the strongest force in the universe. But then came the sickness. It started in the trees, black veins twisting through the roots. Then the sky changed color. The clouds stopped moving. The animals began to vanish, one by one, leaving only silence. When the Alari medics touched the sick, they heard whispers in their minds, words not their own, strange thoughts, dark dreams. Fear grew like a second sun. The elders tried to understand it, but the sickness didn't follow nature. It followed thought. It twisted memory. The Alari knew they were not strong enough, so they sent a signal, crafted from pure hope, glowing with kindness and peace. A message that cried out, "Please, anyone, help us." Through stars bouncing past empires and dead colonies, past the edge of polite space, where the noble races lived in comfort and politics. It passed the trade rings of the technocrats and the glowing city worlds of scholars. None of them answered. Too busy, too far, too afraid. But Earth heard it. On a war-torn moon called Concord 9, a Deathworlder battlecruiser caught the signal. The AI flagged it as class red. Mental contamination risk. But the commander overrode the filter. He listened. The message was soft, filled with sorrow. It spoke of trees, dreams, and things that should not move inside minds, like Commander Reese. Standing in full armor, didn't blink. He had heard this kind of thing before. The humans didn't ask questions. They didn't send diplomats. They prepared for war. 2 weeks later, the Alari sky split open. Dozens of black ships dropped from orbit like burning knives. The Alari ran into their crystal towers, screaming, shielding their children. They had expected soft voices, white coats, peaceful scientists. What came instead were armored giants with glowing visors and steel in their voices. The Alari saw walking tanks with cannons on their arms, drones with claws, suits that smelled of fire and smoke. Some thought it was an invasion. Some fell to their knees, begging. Some wept openly. But the humans did not shoot.
Oh.
They surrounded the cities, set up walls of energy,
Oh.
and began locking down the infected zones. Illyri Elder Talon stepped forward, robes dragging on the soft earth. He approached the human commander with trembling hands. "You were the ones who answered?" he asked, voice full of fear. Commander Reese stepped from his dropship helmet under one arm. His face was lined, eyes cold like a soldier who had seen too many endings. "You said you needed help," Reese said. "But this isn't a rescue." Talon stared. "Then, why are you here?" Reese looked toward the dying trees, where the sky shimmered unnaturally and the ground pulsed with something that had no name. "This is containment," he said flatly. The Alari didn't understand, not yet, but something old and terrible had taken root in their world, and the humans, Deathworlders, born from fire and fury, had seen it before. Inside the forests, the sickness was growing faster. Every hour, more ground turned black. And not just black live. It pulsed, shifted. Things moved under the soil. Voices echoed in the air, mimicking Alari prayers and songs. Drones sent to scout deeper into the trees vanished. One returned. Hours later, empty, hollow. The recording it brought back was worse than death. A soft lullaby in a child's voice, but sung backwards. Reese listened once, then ordered the area marked Red. Juno, the unit's lead comm specialist, studied the data from orbit. This isn't just corruption, she said. It's psychic malware. It's thinking, reacting, alive. Someone asked. No, she said, shaking her head. Awake. On the ground, a young Alari girl stood at the edge of the forest. She had lost her parents to the sickness. Both wandered into the trees and never came back. Now, she watched with empty eyes. A human soldier spotted her and tried to lead her away. But when he touched her shoulder, she turned. Her voice changed. She spoke in perfect Earth standard, though she had never heard it before. You remember us? She said. But the voice wasn't hers. We were inside your moon. You burned us there. We learned pain. We liked it. Then she collapsed. Reese got the report and ordered full planetary lockdown. This isn't a rescue, he repeated. That night, a team of Deathworlder scouts entered the deep zone. They didn't return. Their helmets kept transmitting, though. What? They sent back, made even the humans pause. The voices in the recordings were familiar. Voices of lost friends. The kind of tricks the parasite had used before, long ago, in the final days of Europa Prime. But this time, it wasn't just sound. It sent memory. The soldiers watching the feed began crying. Some shook. One shot himself. It wasn't infection. It was overload. It was weaponized grief. Juno ran the scans again. It's not just mimicking memories, she said. It's pulling them from us. Copying, learning. Sorry, Earth's trauma code specialist stood still, eyes locked on the screen. It's not here to feed, she whispered. What then? Reese asked. Sorry met his eyes. It's here too. Become us. In the main plaza, Elder Talon stood before his people, shaking. We thought they came to save us, he said. But they are fighting a war we never saw coming. Behind him, human walkers patrolled the streets. Drones hovered like silent wolves. The Ilari people wept not, just from fear, but from shame. They had called out with pure hope. And what answered was something built from pain, but it wasn't. The humans the Ilari should have feared. It was what had followed the signal home, and now it was listening. The sky over Leora had always been soft purple in the morning, silver in the evening, scattered with tiny moons. But now it felt heavy. Wrong. The clouds moved too slowly, and sometimes they moved in circles. Not with the wind. Against it, watching. The Deathworlders didn't sleep. Their outposts lit up the Ilari hills like war beacons. Drones buzzed above, scanning, shifting. No soldiers walked alone. No helmets came off. Commander Reese had seen this kind of infection before, and he knew it was never just in the soil. It always started in the mind. Juno stood in the tactical tent, watching the new satellite data. It's spreading faster. It's patterns in the energy fields. Look, she pointed to the screen. Over the forests, strange light pulses danced in regular intervals. Not random, not natural. It's signaling, she said. But not to us. It's calling something. Reese narrowed his eyes. Were reporting. The Ilari were panicking. They didn't understand the weapons, the armor, the cold voices of the humans who never smiled, never explained. But even worse than fear was what they felt when they looked at the forest. They felt drawn to it, like it was calling them by name. Old Elder Talon tried to hold the people together. We are not fighters, he told his people. But we are not fools. Something evil has taken root. We must trust the Deathworlders. But it was hard to trust giants who spoke like war, moved like machines, and never removed their armor. Especially when the children started whispering in there, sleep in Outpost Eco 6. Corporal Lane was alone, monitoring the eastern perimeter. He kept glancing at the trees. They were beautiful, and were moving, not the leaves. The bark. It seemed to breathe, to shimmer, just at the edge of his vision. He heard a soft noise like humming, and it sounded like his mother's voice dead. 10 years. He blinked, and the bark smiled. Lane dropped his gun and screamed. 3 minutes later, the other soldiers found him, crying, blind. His eyes were open, but he wasn't there. Reese got the report and swore under his breath. It's breached visual filters. That means it's adapting. Lex nodded grimly. We're being scanned. Juno set up deeper scans using Earth's psychic firewall, AI built for one purpose: detecting thought traps. The AI found something buried in the signal data, not language, not music. A rhythm, the kind the human brain tries to complete when it hears half a pattern. The parasite wasn't speaking. It was tuning them, using sound and light to align. BRAINWAVES. Juno froze. It's trying to rewrite us. Slowly, like boiling water. It's doing the same thing to the Alari. Sorry, said, reviewing the emotional resonance scans. But faster. Because they're more open. They called for peace, Juno muttered, and the thing that answered just wants silence. The humans reacted fast. Outposts doubled their shielding. No one left without 2 guards. Helmets went to full seal mode. Earth's engineers dropped null-pulse mines into the deeper forest machines that erased psychic signals in a 3-mile radius. But the thing in the forest learned to, at dawn. Drones sent to Map Zone 3 returned with data that couldn't be real. There was a structure in the forest now. Tall, black, made of vines and bone, but shaped like a human tower. It hadn't been there yesterday. Impossible, Sorry whispered. It built.
This from memory?
Reese stared at the holomage. No, he said. It stole it. Meanwhile, the Alari were breaking. Young ones woke up screaming, trying to speak languages they didn't know. Some adults walked into the trees and never came back. A few returned, but they weren't the same. They spoke backwards, smiled at nothing, and their eyes were too still. Elder Talon went to the humans again. Please, our people are losing themselves. Reese looked tired. We warned you. This thing doesn't invade your planet. It invades you. Then why are you still here? Talon asked. Reese stood. Because last time, it left too late. At sunset, a fire team led by Juno entered the new black tower. Inside, it was hollow, cold, silent, until, wasn't, the walls started shifting. Every soldier began hearing different things. Loved ones, regrets, old commands. One heard the screams of a lost squad. Another heard her child's laughter. Juno heard her own voice, from 5 years ago, begging someone to live. It paralyzed her. But then she remembered. Parasites don't just steal memories. They steal what you don't face. She triggered the pain spike in her neural implant. Agony cut through the illusion. The others followed her lead. The walls cracked. The tower collapsed. Back at base, Juno reported the truth. It's building structures. From our memories, it can't create. It can only copy. So what do we do? Asked Sorry. We give it something it can't survive. Reese looked up. What's that? Lex asked. The one thing that makes Deathworlders different. Everyone stared at him. Asterisk, asterisk, pain we've already made peace with. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk that night. All Earth soldiers uploaded their trauma logs, memories of loss, fear, war, betrayal, but survived. Endured, not hidden. They would forge a weapon from it. Not a gun, not a bomb, but a memory, a truth the parasite couldn't understand, because humans don't cry out for hope. They come when others do, and when they arrive, they bring the kind of fire that never forgets. The sickness had no smell, no shape, no color. It didn't drip or spread like a disease. It simply existed quiet and invisible, latching onto thoughts, hiding behind memories, pretending to be something trusted until it was too late. The Alari called it a ghost fog. But the humans had a better name. The whisper plagued it had wiped out colonies before. On moons, ships, entire systems, places where species thought they were alone, until voices began answering them back. The Alari had hoped for help. Instead, they'd lit a beacon. And now the plague was no longer whispering. It was talking back. Juno sat hunched over her station in the shielded bunker below Leora's surface. The parasite was inside channels now, not broadcasting, listening. When soldiers spoke too long near the forest, the whispers echoed. Their own words back-twisted just enough to sound like commands. Some soldiers were nearly fooled, until one of them obeyed a fake order and walked off a cliff. Now, all human transmissions were encrypted and filtered through emotional dampeners. Even then, the whispers found cracks. Juno stared at the waveform. Dancing on her screen, it pulsed like a heartbeat, but the pattern wasn't random. "They're copying the rhythm of command speech," she said. "It's trying to pass as us." Reese leaned in. "Can it be shut out?" Juno shook her head. "No, but it can be drowned." Above the bunker, Alari citizens gathered in trembling silence, where children had started sleepwalking always toward. The forest, the humans stopped them. But some had already gone too far, and when they were found, they didn't scream. They just smiled. No wounds, no blood, just vacant eyes. In strange, repeated phrases and voices that didn't match their mouths, one boy whispered, "We remember you. We're home burned in silence." "Let us forget for you," another said. "She waited under ice. We left her behind." The words weren't Alari. They were human. Juno reviewed the speech logs, and her breath caught. "They're using our past now," she whispered. "It's not just reading us. It's starting to think like us." Inside Earth's mobile command hub, Sari pulled up the trauma library-coded data from past wars. The system flagged several memory echoes already detected in the parasites. Voice patterns. "The plague is evolving faster than any simulation," she said, "and it's learning how to manipulate human pain." Lex frowned. "Oh, we've survived worse, right?" Sari looked up, eyes cold. "We survived by hiding it. This thing, it forces it into the open." Reese made the call. "We weaponize. What it's trying to feed on. Give it too much too fast." "How?" Juno asked. "We give it truth. All of it." The Memory Spear project was activated that night. A single satellite was launched into orbit. Its only job was to broadcast deep core trauma data and cut unfiltered raw human memory directly into the upper atmosphere. Not to kill, not to heal, but to flood the signal space. Like throwing fire into smoke. Every story had weight. A mother losing her child during evacuation, a soldier burying his entire unit under alien sand, a child watching Earth burn from a space station window, knowing his parents didn't make it out. Not heroic, not glorious, just real. The whispers screamed. The Alari couldn't hear them. But every human went dead for 5 seconds. Then the forest pulsed and began to burn. The parasite lashed out. It wasn't physical, but mental. Reese collapsed mid-command, grabbing his head. A flood of stolen voices hit him, some his own. Some he'd never heard. One was his dead brother, begging him to come home. Others on base began vomiting, shaking. Screens shattered. One drone self-destructed from signal corruption. Juno triggered the firewall overrides. Sorry. Activated the counterpulse, and Lex, bleeding from the nose, shouted, "It's trying to become a species." The middle of it all, the Alari girl. Viren stood in the garden ruins. She wasn't afraid. She heard the voices too, but unlike the others, she could tell which were real. The parasite spoke through the trees again. "You feel forgotten? Let us hold your memory." She stepped forward, fists clenched. "No," she whispered. "It's mine." The signal died. Silence fell. Then slowly, the parasite retreated. The forest dimmed. The voices quieted. The children stopped sleepwalking. Reese opened his eyes, breathing hard. Sari wiped her face. "It can't digest that much grief at once. It wants clean emotions, easy things. Not us." Juno nodded. It expected broken prey. It got a storm. Something else had changed too. The parasite didn't disappear. It hid. It learned it. Built copies, scout drones, found statues deep in the forest, figures shaped like humans, posed like Earth soldiers, but wrong. Melting, laughing, eyes too wide, mouths too thin. Juno looked at one and whispered, "It's not running." She turned. To Reese, "It's getting ready to speak." Reese didn't flinch. "Then we remind it what we are." There was no declaration. There was no roar of vengeance or clash of metal. The war didn't start with a bang, it began with a whisper that never ended. A war with no clear enemy, no front line, only thoughts that weren't yours, sounds that shouldn't exist, and memories that weren't yours to remember. The humans called it the Silent War because there were no explosions, only the slow unraveling of reality. And they had fought it before, but never like this. 3 nights after the memory, broadcast scorched the forest. The Alari city of Aaron fell quiet. No screams, no resistance, just silence. When the human recon team arrived at dawn, they found everyone still, not dead, not asleep, paused as if something had frozen their thoughts mid-breath. Some Alari were sitting at tables, others standing, in gardens. A child was holding a glowing toy, eyes locked on nothing. They were breathing, but nothing else moved. And worst of all, they were smiling. Not with joy. With surrender, Juno ran a deep neural scan from the command ship. She pulled data from 6 frozen Alari minds. Their conscious thoughts had been replaced by static. A code, repeating over and over again. We are safe. You're whole. No more pain. You do not need to remember. She turned to Reese. It's hijacking the part of the brain that holds trauma, replacing it with fake comfort. It's not just attacking minds, it's editing identity. Reese said nothing for a moment. Then, so it wants to erase us. No, Juno whispered. It wants to rewrite us. They called it psychic pacification. The parasite wasn't killing it, was numbing, taking out guilt, grief, anger, turning people into docile statues, obedient and calm. To most peaceful species, it would feel like mercy to humans. It was horror. Lex clenched his jaw. I'd rather be dead than erased. Sari nodded slowly. That's why it can't use us the same way. We're used to pain. Wear it, carry it, that's why we're dangerous to it. Reese looked around the table. Then we fight not with weapons, he said. Fight with memory. We make. Sure, it hurts. The next phase began at dusk. The parasite didn't just mimic, now it replied. Across comes. The humans began hearing responses in perfect Earth standard. Calm, smooth, polite. We offer peace. We take your weight. Lay it down. Be still. The humans didn't answer. So the parasite changed tone. We see your thoughts. You are not soldiers. You are afraid. You are broken. Why bleed when we can make it end? Reese stepped into the shielded come chamber. He activated the direct response line and spoke only 4 words. We're from Earth. Try us. That night, the forests changed. The black trees curled toward the cities. Roads cracked. Rivers turned dark. New shapes formed in the woods. Not Alari, but human. Soldiers, civilians, faces copied from the data archives. Broken versions of Earth's past. A woman from Reese's old squad. His mother. A child who died on Mars 3. All created from memory fragments pulled from the neural stream. They approached the human perimeter without fear, not illusions. Biomatter shells, Juno gasped. It's building bodies from memory, Sari whispered. It wants to become us. Lex chambered around, and let's show it what that costs. The humans held the line. Not with bullets, but with truth bursts. Pulse stations. Broadcast human pain data directly into the oncoming mock forms. Not fiction, not horror, reality. A battlefield under Titan's storm. Mine collapse on Mars. The evacuation of Luna 7. The cries of a mother holding her dying child. After a whole breach, each burst hit like a spiritual grenade. The mock forms collapsed. Their copied bodies twisted, melted. Screamed not from physical pain, but from emotional incompatibility. Because humans did not forget pain, they used it. The Alari watched from their rooftops in terror and awe they had thought Earth would bring. War, they were wrong. Earth brought memory, sharpened like a blade. And the parasite, it was starting to crack. A final transmission hit every Earth frequency. You burn in your minds. You are storms and flesh. Why do you suffer when you could be silent? Juno answered. Because pain is proof we're still human. Later alone, Reese stood at the edge of the silent forest. The parasite had stopped talking. For now, but the silence wasn't peace. It was strategy. It was thinking, preparing, and deep beneath the trees, something was growing, something older. Then memory Reese knew the war wasn't over. This was just the quiet part, the part where the darkness waited, for you to forget. But humans never did, not the ones who came from a death world. The parasite stopped attacking. No more voices. No new illusions. No whispers in the cums or faces in the trees. It went still, not because it was defeated, but because it was learning, adapting, watching for 3 days. The forest didn't grow. No more Alari went missing. The skies above Leora seemed calm again. The Alari hoped it meant peace, but the humans knew better. Earth had seen what silence meant in this kind of war. It was the breath before the next strike, and this time it would go for the core, not of the planet, but of humanity itself. Juno sat in the memory lab, eyes hollow from no sleep. The last batch of signals recovered from the southern zone wasn't static anymore. It was clearer than before. The parasite had begun echoing emotions in layers, regret stacked over anger. Layered with grief, sewn into moments the humans hadn't even uploaded. It started predicting our responses. She said, voice dry. Sari leaned over her shoulder. It's not just learning what pain is. It's learning what pain means to us. They watched one signal again, a child's voice whispering, I'm sorry, it'll be better, looped over the sounds of a distant battle. Where did it get? That? Sari asked. Juno blinked. That's not from the logs. They both froze. It's from me, Juno whispered, a memory I never shared. The parasite wasn't just pulling data now. It was inside. Reese called an emergency briefing. The inspection doesn't want to destroy us, he said. It wants to consume what makes us human. Copy it, use it, weaponize it. And it's already. Inside the psychic field, Lex tapped the map. So what's the play? We activate Protocol Gray? Everyone looked up. Sir, Sari said carefully.
Ow.
Protocol Gray hasn't been used since Europa Prime. It almost broke the minds of half our soldiers. Exactly, Reese replied. Because it's too much for humans. He looked toward the screen, where the parasite's last message still echoed. We can carry you. Let go. Let go. Reese whispered. Let's see if it can carry this. Protocol Gray was Earth's deadliest psychic weapon. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a virus. It was pure human memory, stripped of all filters, all defense raw. Emotional trauma pumped at full frequency into enemy mental space. It didn't kill. It didn't maim. It only showed truth. But no alien species had ever survived exposure, because it showed the part of humanity that crawled through ashes and chose to keep walking. The weapon was built in orbit, a pulse beacon, fueled by neural data from Earth's oldest survivor soldiers, disaster victims. Refugees from the fall of old Terra, men and women who had lived through every It's kind of lost and never broken. Their pain wasn't random. It was organized. Sequenced. Like a storm designed by surgeons. The beacon's name was Echo. Reese simply called it the scream that thinks. The Alari watched in silence as the human teams set up the launch tower. Elder Talon approached Reese as he oversaw the final alignment. Will it destroy the corruption? He asked. No, Reese said, but it'll force it into the open. No more hiding behind thoughts. Talon lowered his head. And what will it do to us? Reese looked away. We've programmed the pulse to filter for Earth-born minds. It won't hear what we hear. Talon studied the Deathworlder commander's face. But you will. Reese nodded. We already do. Launch at 0400. The beacon ignited with a silent shockwave, no explosion, no light. Just feeling. An invisible scream that rolled over the forest, the cities, the world. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was grief remembered without apology. A mother losing her son in an airlock fire and never blaming herself again. A child watching his village burn, choosing to survive. A medic holding a soldier's hand during his last breath, whispering, You were enough, no weakness, only endurance. The forest reacted instantly. Black trees twisted violently. Shadows tore from the ground like smoke in reverse. The mock forms melted, screaming in stolen voices. The sky over Leora turned gray, then crimson, and then something stepped out. Tall, shifting, vague. A shape built of faces Alari, inhuman, flickering in and out. It had no legs, no mouth. It hovered, wrapped in false memories, but its voice was clear. You are pain, you are rot. We offer peace. Why do you fight to suffer? Sorry, standing on the edge of the ridge, answered without flinching. Because pain tells us we lived. And with that, she activated the second wave. The parasite screamed not in sound, but through collapsing minds. Its structures imploded. The tower of faces fell apart midair. Trees burned without flame. Air distorted like a broken mirror. The Alari cried out in fear. The humans held the line. Lex, kneeling beside Juno, gritted his teeth. Is it dying? He asked. No, she said, blood on her lips. It's retreating. Back underground. Reese stepped forward, eyes locked on the burning forest. Then we follow it. It answered the call for hope. But what Earth delivered wasn't soft or soothing. It was pain that didn't apologize. The kind that makes you stronger, not softer. The kind parasites could never survive. The kind that made Deathworlders. The ground split open where the trees had fallen. The forest, once green and glowing, was now black and brittle. Twisted limbs cracked underfoot as the human strike teams moved in slow, silent, ready. Drones scanned every inch of the scorched terrain, but what lay beneath was worse than they imagined. There were tunnels under the roots, not natural, not dug grown, lined with soft organic matter and flickering with faint psychic static. The tunnels stretched like veins through Leora's crust. The parasite had been building something deep hidden away, where light and logic couldn't reach. And now, the Deathworlders were going in after it. Commander Reese stood at the mouth of the largest tunnel. The air was thick not with gas, but emotion, sadness, guilt. It pressed against his skin like humidity. Crawling into his helmet filters, he tapped his cum. Team Alpha, move in. No open chatter. Neural encryption on. Masks sealed. Beside him, Juno loaded her neural dampeners into her suit. If it's down here, it's scared. Lex checked his pulse rifle. Let's make sure it stays that way. Sorry, unusually quiet, stepped last into the dark. Just remember, she whispered, we're not going in to kill it. Reese glanced back. We're going in to make it understand. The tunnels pulsed like they were breathing. Heat signatures flickered just ahead, but when scanned, they vanished. Something knew they were coming. Then the voices began again. Faint, familiar. You were there. You let them die. Why didn't you speak up? Right. Could have saved her. You didn't. The parasite was peeling their thoughts, digging into guilt like claws through soft earth. It wanted to break them before they reached the core, but humans were used to this. They carried voices like these every day and still kept walking at. 600 meters down, the first illusion hit them. A massive chamber opened up smooth walls, glowing with memory light. In the center, a recreation of Earth, not the real Earth. A perfect one. Skies always blue, oceans clear, cities never bombed. No war, no pain. The kind of Earth that never existed. Sorry whispered, it's offering us peace again. Juno scanned. The simulation. No, it's baiting us. Testing if we'll trade truth for comfort. Reese stepped forward and fired. A pulse burst into the image. The Earth shape shattered, and behind it, another tunnel. Wider, throbbing, waiting, down they went. Every meter brought new pressure. Every step, a new voice. They saw fragments, children. They failed friends who died screaming. It's moments they never forgave themselves for, but they kept walking, because pain wasn't an enemy, it was a compass. Finally, at the deepest point, they reached the core. It was a chamber of impossible geometry angled wrong, lit by flickering neurons. The walls were covered in faces, human, Ilari, Others, all real, all stolen. They weren't just illusions anymore. They were trapped memories, souls, maybe held like museum pieces. Juno's voice cracked. It didn't want to erase us. It wanted to collect us. Sari approached one face, her own, eyes wide, mouth moving in a silent scream. I never gave. At this memory, she whispered, Reese activated the final payload. Protocol Gray. Phase 2. Emotional overload. Unlike the beacon, this wasn't a wide burst. It was focused. They weren't broadcasting old memories. They were transmitting acceptance, forgiveness, resilience, all the pain, the failure, the losses, but not hidden, healed. The one thing the parasite couldn't process, because it fed on suffering unspoken, and these humans had stopped hiding. The chamber trembled, the faces cracked, the walls screamed at sound, but pressure. Raw resistance? The parasite lashed out, showing them everything at once. All their darkest moments, amplified. Lex dropped to one knee. Juno screamed through gritted teeth, but Reese welcomed it. He welcomed it. You want my worst? He growled. You've already seen it. Now watch me stand anyway. He pressed the trigger. The overload pulsed outward. The chamber collapsed. The faces vanished. The illusion broke. The parasite, shattered, not destroyed, but changed. It had seen something it couldn't devour. Pain not as weakness, but as armor. The humans carried the unconscious Ilari survivors out of the forest ruins as the tunnels began folding in on themselves, like lungs exhaling for the last time. Leora's surface cracked one last time, then stilled. The sky lightened. The wind returned, and silence became just silence. Juno stood beside Reese at the edge of the crater. It tried to become us, she said. But it couldn't carry what we carry. Reese nodded. Because we don't carry it alone. The fires had gone out. The forest was gone. And beneath Leora's cracked surface, the tunnels were silent. The parasite was gone, but something had changed. Not just in the air, or the ground, but in the Ilari. They no longer looked toward the sky with hope. Now, they looked at the humans with fear. Not because the Deathworlders had destroyed something, but because of how they had done it. Not with peace. Not with forgiveness, but with pain. With the will to endure anything. Even salvation, the Ilari learned, had a cost. The reconstruction teams arrived 2 days later. Earth ships hovered over Leora's atmosphere, dropping supply crates, engineering pods, medical towers. Every inch of the ruined Ilari cities was scanned, mapped, and marked for repair. But most of the Ilari didn't come near. They watched from rooftops. Silent, even Elder Talon, once the strongest voice for human aid, now walked with hesitation. They came when we called, he whispered to another elder. They burned the plague out of our roots. But they stayed the same, the other replied. The parasite tried to erase them and it failed. We would have broken. Talon nodded slowly, because they are not like us. Commander Reese stood on the edge of the blast crater. The sky was clean now, stars visible again, still something gnawed at him. The parasite hadn't tried to kill them in the end. It had offered its peace. Soft, quiet, perfect peace. But for a price, let go of the pain. Forget who you were. He knew why it failed. Because Earth remembered. Everything. The fall of Terra. The Scream Wars. The silence of Mars. The extinction of 12. Colonies and humanity never ran from it. They built rockets from ashes. Juno sat inside. The new biomed tent, reviewing post-conflict psychic reports. No parasite signals. No whispers. But something odd appeared in the data. A single message. You endure, we retreat. We cannot become what refuses to break. The signature wasn't familiar. It wasn't the parasite. It was something beneath it. Older, a sleeping consciousness. Buried in the roots of Leora, the parasite had been just a mouthpiece, a symptom, and now the core was awake. Later that night, Rhys met with Talon alone. The Alari elder looked tired, older than ever. "We asked for help," he said softly. "And you answered? You saved us. But you were not what we thought." Rhys didn't argue. "You don't fear death," Talon continued. "You fear forgetting. That's what keeps you moving." Rhys looked him in the eyes. "We come from a world where everything tried to kill us. Cold, fire, teeth, time itself. We learned early fear doesn't stop pain. It stops healing." Talon lowered his gaze. "And what if we had accepted the parasite's offer? Let it make us forget. Would you have let us go?" Rhys was quiet. "Then we would have come anyway. 'Cause even if you forget who you are, we remember. We don't leave people behind." The next day, the Alari held a council vote. It passed by one voice. Earth's presence would remain. The humans would build not just forts and towers, but schools, archives, and memory halls. Not as conquerors, but as witnesses, because survival is more than rebuilding cities. It's remembering why you fought to keep them. Later, as the sun set on a healed world, a group of Alari children gathered near the edge of the human camp. One asked, "Are they staying forever?" Another said, "They don't smile much." But one girl, the one who didn't run during the first signal, said quietly, "They don't smile because they remember everything." She paused, "And I think maybe that's why they win." Inside the command tent, Rhys stood with his team. They'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. Juno leaned against the wall. "Ever wonder what they saw in us when they sent the signal?" Sari replied. "They saw legends, gods, saviors." Lex chuckled darkly. "And what did they get?" Rhys looked out at the Alari skyline. "They got humans." The world was quiet now. Leora's skies were clear, its cities rebuilt, its people slowly learning to breathe again. The plague was gone, parasite destroyed, but silence, the humans had learned, was never the end. It was the beginning of memory, and memory was what made Earth different. The final memorial stood at the edge of the forest, the place where the parasite had made its last stand. Carved into the dark stone were words in both Alari script and Earth standard. "We do not forget, we do not surrender, and we do not break." Hundreds stood beneath artillery and human alike. Elder Talon stepped forward, speaking not as a politician, but as one who had survived. "We called across the stars for peace," he said. "We begged for medicine, for hope, for mercy." Turned toward the human delegation, and Earth answered. Not with soft words or gentle hands, but with fire, with memory, with the weight of what they'd endured. His voice cracked. "We feared them. And maybe we still do, but now we understand them." He stepped back, and Rhys took his place. Rhys didn't speak with ceremony. He didn't know how. He only knew the truth. "You asked for saviors," he said quietly. "There were not saviors. We're what's left when the galaxy forgets to care, when peace breaks, when silence falls too long." He looked out at the crowd. "We're from Earth, a death world, and we remember every scar." He raised one hand and pointed to the monument. "That's not a warning. That's a promise." Later that night, Juno sat with the Alari children, showing them how to record digital memory beads. One of the girls asked, "Do humans ever forget?" Juno smiled, a rare, tired smile. "We try not to. That's how we keep going." Sari stood nearby, eyes fixed on the stars. "We thought we'd bring help," she said softly to Lex. "But I think we brought something else." Lex nodded. "We brought who we are." And who they were wasn't clean, or calm, or easy. They were pain. They were strength. They were the memory of Earth. A week later, the last team prepared to leave. Not all would go. Some humans would stay behind to guide, to teach, to watch. Not as rulers, not as soldiers, as witnesses, because the parasite might be gone. But the core beneath Leora still pulsed, still watched, still waited. It had learned something about humans, and it hadn't. One final message was sent before the ships left orbit. A broadcast not to Leora, but to the stars. We are earthborn. We carry our pain. We answer when others call, and we do not come alone. If you call for help, know what you invite. It wasn't a threat. It was a truth. Far beyond Leora, on a distant world infected. With whispers, an ancient creature listened to the signal. It trembled, not in fear, but in respect, because it had heard of Earth, of the Deathworlders, of the species that used pain as fuel, and for the first time in its long life, it chose not to speak.